You and your friends throw a small party at home. After finishing eating and drinking, everyone decides to watch a horror movie together. You soon realize that you have already seen this movie before, and it's a really good one. Anyway, it wouldn't be any fun without you, so you reluctantly enjoy the film. Of course, you feel bored and sleepy because you already know all the plot of the movie. The movie has come to an end, and you know for sure how the ending will play out. However, strange things start to happen. The ending of the movie is completely different from what you have seen. In fact, all the characters were supposed to die at the end of the movie, but they survived magically. An invisible character tried to change the plot of the movie to save the characters. After a period of research, the SCP Foundation found out the mysterious character and its anomalous properties. It is named SCP-2786. SCP-2786 is the designation for a metaphysical entity, narrative-based, bipedal humanoid of indeterminate age, sex, and appearance. SCP-2786 will be idiosyncratically perceived by any being that interacts with it, varying in traits from interaction to interaction. SCP-2786 displays symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder and appears fantasy-prone, often having difficulty distinguishing between internal landscapes, narrative works, and physical being. SCP-2786's nature was first brought to the attention of the Foundation when several forms of horror media were found to have been illegally altered in a means that did not coincide with standard editing equipment. Upon closer observation, all narratives altered in this manner involved substantially changing the plot to include SCP-2786, who was always perceived as a protagonist or deus ex machina character. SCP-2786's presence within a story ultimately disrupts the flow of events, leading to completely different and often positive endings. SCP-2786's actions within various media suggest it may have a mild form of precognition or anomalous intuition, often preventing characters from progressing the plot in a way that avoids danger entirely. The Foundation have found a list of alterations in some fiction stories. The Shining, 1980. The film is without alteration until halfway through, during a scene in which two characters venture into a hedge maze. SCP-2786 is briefly seen in the background, apparently observing the individuals. The entity moves off camera and is not seen until 20 minutes later. SCP-2786 reappears in the Overlook Hotel, approaching antagonist Jack Torrance from behind. Torrance is drinking heavily and conversing with the ghost of a dead bartender. SCP-2786 takes Torrance's drink from him, pours it out, and hits him over the head with the glass. The rest of the Torrance family is escorted off the premises by SCP-2786 and into the blizzard. Camera cuts to epilogue. Danny and Wendy Torrance in a new studio apartment and apparently doing well. Movie ends 45 minutes early. Silent Hill, film, 2006. SCP-2786 manifests early on, warning main character Rose not to bring her daughter to Silent Hill. After it becomes apparent that they are adamant about going, SCP-2786 frowns and disappears off camera. Sometime later, Rose goes to start her car only to find it non-functioning for an unknown reason. Unable to make the trip, Rose and her daughter stay inside and build a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle of a lighthouse until the movie abruptly ends. House of Leaves, novel, 2000. SCP-2786 appears in the Navidson meta-narrative, confronting Karen and insisting she and her family avoid moving to Ash Tree Lane. Karen convinces her husband and the Navidson record ceases to exist for the remainder of the story. Narrator/protagonist Johnny Truant is no longer negatively affected by the material, going on to describe his life at the tattoo parlor, which seems relatively improved by SCP-2786's presence. The entity is referred to as Hero throughout the story, which ends 300 pages early. Cabin in the Woods, film, 2012. While not seen right away, SCP-2786 appears shortly into the film, posing as one of the group of college kids heading to a remote cabin for a vacation. No characters refer to the entity by name or gender but do not seem fazed by its presence and react candidly. SCP-2786 attempts to stop the characters from interacting with one of the many cursed items in the basement of the cabin, including the diary of one Patience Buckner, an event that would otherwise go on to resurrect the undead corpses of her and her family. Unfortunately, SCP-2786 was unable to keep one of the main characters, Marty, from inspecting a set of negatives on a vintage projector reel, setting in motion the release of a large lycanthrope which proceeds to maul one of the teenagers. SCP-2786 appears to pull the entity off of the character, grabbing a knife from a set of vintage silver cutlery found conveniently nearby and repeatedly stabbing it until it expires. The film ends without mention of B-plot, the final scene detailing their escape from the woods and recounting of the event from the table of a fast food restaurant, which is presumably a future date. Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Video game, 2010. In an affected copy of the game, the player was greeted by SCP-2786 when the protagonist Daniel awakens on the floor of the castle without his memory. SCP-2786 addresses the character directly and not the player, insisting they sit this one out. SCP-2786 proceeds to progress into Castle Brennenburg, the camera following it despite no further dialogue on the character's end, suggesting they were left behind. The player is unable to control any game functions aside from pausing the game, during which SCP-2786 is seen loitering in the background and appearing impatient. Completion of the game by SCP-2786 is done swiftly, the entity brute-forcing most puzzles and interacting with the environment in a way that is not possible for the player. Upon encountering a gatherer, SCP-2786 is heard snorting before brandishing a handgun from an unknown source, which proves effective in terminating the usually impervious enemies. The game proceeds in this manner until it confronts and kills main antagonist Alexander Brennenburg, after which it appears to flex for no one in particular, sigh, and then walk off camera. Game credits roll shortly thereafter. SCP-2786's activities are known to occur only in fictitious media. Surprisingly, the entity appeared physically at the Foundation. It seems to have a mission here. 3 days before scheduled monthly terminations and reassignment, SCP-2786 appeared to manifest on-site without warning. Subject remained cooperative for the most part, but was generally considered obdurate and unlikable. Although seemingly incorporeal, SCP-2786 exhibited an apparent blending of reality, narrative causality, and internal fantasy. Hume readings of SCP-2786 reveal little difference from baseline, yet the anomaly behaves and interacts with reality in a way that warps the flow of events to follow what happens to be standard narrative cohesion. It is unknown how SCP-2786 managed to manifest itself within the Foundation, but there has been some hypothesis on the nature of the subject. Fortunately, the Foundation has a chance to interview him.
Alright, this is a bit impromptu, but given the circumstances, I think you at least owe us some answers.
Straight to the point. I like it. Works for me too. I have business elsewhere.
Business? What kind of business?
The hero's work is never done.
So you're a hero then?
I am. Always been. Is that what this is about?
Not quite.
How did you end up in our facility? What, this chop shop? Same way I find myself in any other place. I go where I'm called upon.
So, who called upon you?
Those in distress, the suffering. Is this really not making any sense to you? I'm the champion. It's what I do.
Is that what you were doing when we found you in the horror flicks? In the books?
The what now?
Where you were before you manifested here.
Oh, you mean the campground. Camp Crystal Lake.
Yes, that's the one.
That one's actually a funny story. See, I usually have a rough time with the bigger guys. Sometimes even I worry I won't make it out when the baddies are eldritch horrors or what have you. These teenagers, I can't even believe they needed me to dispatch one guy for them. I have more important things to do than babysit a few kids who made the mistake of ignoring all the obvious warning signs. Guy comes lumbering out of the woods, burly fella, big old knife in hand. I barely broke a sweat kicking his mask in.
I saw that, yes.
You were there?
Not exactly, no.
Huh. So was that it? Can I go?
We still have a few more things to discuss.
Listen, I've been pretty cordial considering. I usually get right to work, but honestly, you guys have been holding me up from the get-go. I'm here for a reason, you know.
Right. The suffering. Who might they be?
I think you know. It's better if you don't, anyway. SCP-2786 promptly stands up and phases through the wall on its left. Containment breach alarms trigger shortly thereafter. Following the events of the interview, Site-180's humanoid containment wing and 7 of its 10 D-Class personnel cell blocks were found breached by an unknown source. SCP-2786 is suspected to have been involved in the event. some D-class and humanoid anomalies were found missing from their chambers. SCP-2786 remains at large. SCP-2786 was detected less than 48 hours later, attempting to save characters in a Blu-ray copy of Saw 4 in the Site-180 employee lounge. The affected copy was played on a loop until its current containment measures were devised. SCP-2786 has been placed in its enhanced narrative complex, and containment is considered a success. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please subscribe to our channel, press the bell icon, and never miss an update.